But beneath the snark, Reba was hurting. She watched Brock, the man she had built a life with, behave like a stranger. She felt like a relic of a previous life, a ghost haunting her own hallways. Then came the Hollywood call. Chapter 3: Lights, Camera, Chaos. It started as a local news segment on the mom and pop shop taking on the baby industry. A young, ambitious director named Julian Thorne had seen the segment and smelled the new American dream. He didn't just want to film the business, he wanted to film the family. He saw the tension between Reba and Brock, the absurdity of Van's tactical dreams, and the quiet strength of a woman holding it all together. "It's a tragedy comedy, Reba," Julian said, his camera trailing her as she folded laundry. "It's about the death of the nuclear family and the birth of the whatever this is." "It's a circus, Julian," Reba said, looking directly into the lens, "and I'm the one cleaning up after the elephants." The filming lasted a year of Van accidentally setting a prototype bag on fire, a year of Kira's band, Velvet Chainsaw, practicing in the basement until the windows rattled, a year of Brock trying to reconnect with his kids, while Barbara Jean tried to soul bond with Reba. And through it all, there was the Oscar. The documentary, titled The Eye of the Hurricane, became a sensation. The world fell in love with the single mom who worked too hard, who refused to break, and who managed to find humor in the wreckage of her own life. Chapter 4: The Red Carpet and the Reality Check. The night of the Academy Awards was a fever dream. Reba found herself in a dress that cost more than her first car, standing next to Van, who was wearing a tuxedo with tactical cargo pockets. When they called the name The Eye of the Hurricane, Reba felt the world go silent. She stood on that stage, the golden man heavy in her hand, and looked out at the sea of famous faces. But she didn't see them. She saw the kitchen on Vesper Avenue. She saw the faces of her children. She saw the mess. "I'd like to thank my ex-husband," Reba said into the microphone, her voice steady and sharp, "for leaving. Because without the storm, I never would have realized I was the one who owned the boat." The applause was deafening, but the real work was waiting for her back in Houston. Chapter 5: The Full Circle. A week later, the Houston Heat was back to its relentless self. The Oscar was sitting on the mantelpiece, right next to Sarah's first drawing of a tactical turtle. It looked strange there, a billion-dollar icon next to a crayon masterpiece, but it fit. Van was in the garage, arguing with the baby company about the font size on the diaper packaging. He wanted aggressive Gothic, and they wanted soft sans serif. "It's about the brand, Reba," he yelled through the door. "Softness is for the weak. These babies are the future of the infantry." Kira was back in her band rehearsal, the Velvet Chainsaw sounding louder and sharper than ever. In the backyard, Brock and Barbara Jean were engaged in their latest project. They were currently crouched over the compost bin, hands joined, eyes closed. "We are one with the rot, Brock," Barbara Jean whispered. "The decay is just a transition to new life." "I think I see a spiritual spark," Brock claimed, probably just seeing a fly. Reba sat on her porch, a glass of iced tea in her hand. The condensation ran down the glass, cooling her palm. She thought about the smooth sailing she had craved all those years ago. She remembered the nights she had prayed for peace, for a life where nothing ever broke and no one ever let her down. She realized now that a life without storms would have been a life without the rocket ships, the Oscars, the tactical diapers, and the beautiful, messy family that filled her heart. The sailing wasn't smooth. It was wild, unpredictable, and often dumber than a sack of stupid. It was a chaotic mess of lawsuits, teenage angst, and ex-husbands who didn't know when to leave. But as the sun set over Vesper Avenue, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire, Reba Hart knew she wouldn't change a single wave. She was a single mom who worked too hard. She was a partner who had found her match in her own resilience. She was a survivor. And for the first time in her life, she realized that smooth sailing wasn't a destination. It was the feeling of being exactly where you were meant to be, right in the eye of the hurricane. The house behind her was a riot of noise. Van was now shouting about ergonomic nipple shields, and Kira had started a drum solo that threatened the structural integrity of the chimney. "Hey, idiots!" Reba shouted into the house, her voice carrying over the din. "Dinner's ready, and if I see that golden man wearing a tiny diaper, someone's going to live in the Jablonski house." A chorus of "Yes, Mom," answered her, followed by the sound of running feet and Van tripping over a rug. Reba smiled, took one last sip of her tea, sweet, cold, and exactly what she needed, and walked inside to join the storm. She didn't need the sun to stay out. She knew how to dance in the rain. Chapter 6. The Golden Aftershock. Success, Reba quickly learned, didn't make the house any quieter. If anything, it added a layer of expensive complication to the existing chaos. The tactical diaper empire was no longer a garage project. It was a multinational corporation, headquartered in a shiny glass building downtown that Van insisted on referring to as the command center. "Reba, we have a problem," Van said one Tuesday morning, slamming a stack of legal papers onto the kitchen table. He was wearing a suit, but he'd still managed to get grape jelly on the lapel. "The big baby conglomerate is suing us. They claim we've copyrighted the term high-velocity leakage protection." Reba sighed, pouring herself a third cup of coffee. "Van, they're diapers. Can't we just call it not peeing on the floor?" "It's about the branding, Reba. We're selling a lifestyle of elite, high-performance parenting." While Van battled corporate giants, Reba found herself battling something far more insidious: the paparazzi. Ever since the Oscar win, there was a man in a beige sedan parked at the end of Vesper Avenue. He wasn't even good at hiding. He usually had a bucket of fried chicken on his dashboard and a lens the size of a telescope. "He caught a picture of me taking out the trash in my bathrobe," Reba complained to Kira, who was currently tuning her guitar with aggressive precision. The headline was, "Oscar winner in trashy tussle." "I wasn't tussling with the trash, Kira. I was just trying to fit the pizza boxes in the bin." Kira didn't look up. "Welcome to the machine, Mom. Everything is content now. Your suffering is just a JPEG for a bored suburbanite. Thank you for that ray of sunshine, Kira. Truly. I'll go tell the paparazzo he's doing God's work." But the real aftershock came in the form of a knock on the door that Friday evening. It wasn't a process server or a fan. It was Brock. He looked tired, his hair a little thinner, and his spiritual glow noticeably absent. "Reba," he said, shifting his weight, "can we talk? Just one-on-one. No sage, no cameras." Chapter 7. The Uninvited Ghost. Reba led Brock out to the porch. She didn't offer him tea. She didn't offer him a seat. She just leaned against the railing and waited. "Barbara Jean and I are. We're taking a break," Brock admitted, looking out at the street. "She's gone to a silent retreat in New Mexico. Apparently, my aura has become too jagged for her to meditate around." Reba couldn't help it. A small, sharp laugh escaped her. "Jagged? Brock, you've always been about as smooth as a bag of gravel." "I know I messed up, Reba," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "Seeing you on that stage, seeing what you and Van have built, it made me realize how much I missed out on. I was the captain of this ship once, remember?" Reba turned to him, her eyes flashing like heat lightning. "No, Brock. You were the guy who jumped overboard the second the clouds turned gray. You didn't miss out. You opted out. You traded the jagged reality of this family for a woman who thinks you can fix a marriage with a crystal. I just want back in, Reba, not as the boss, just as part of it. I want to help with the business. I know real estate. I know Houston. The business is fine, Brock. Van is an idiot, but he's my idiot, and he's the one who stayed." She looked at him and, for the first time in years, she didn't feel anger. She felt pity. Brock was a man who lived in the past because he couldn't handle the present. He wanted the glory of the Oscar without the grit of the garage. "Go home, Brock," she said softly. "The Jablonski house is still for sale, I hear. Maybe you and Barbara Jean can find some harmony there. But don't come back here looking for a seat at the table you flipped over." As he walked away, his shoulders slumped, Reba felt a strange sense of lightness. The ghost had been exorcised. Chapter 8. the eye of the next storm. The months rolled on, and the tactical diaper empire went public. Van became a minor celebrity, appearing on talk shows to demonstrate how to change a diaper while wearing a gas mask. Kira's band signed a deal with an indie label, and Sarah started elementary school, her backpack adorned with tactical turtle patches that were now the hottest item in the Houston school district. Life was still messy. There were still lawsuits. There were still burnt dinners and screaming matches over who used all the hot water. But something had changed in Reba. She no longer looked at the chaos as a problem to be solved. She looked at it as the scenery. One evening, as the family gathered for their weekly command council dinner, a new face sat at the table. He was a quiet man named Elias, a local contractor who had come to fix the roof after the last hurricane and ended up staying for Reba's brisket. He didn't talk much. He didn't have a vision. He just sat there, laughing at Van's jokes and making sure Reba's glass was always full. "So, Elias," Van said, pointing a rib at him, "what's your tactical specialty? You look like a guy who knows his way around a breach-and-clear maneuver." Elias smiled at Reba. "I'm pretty good at fixing leaks and staying calm when things get loud." Reba reached under the table and squeezed his hand. It was a rough hand, calloused from hard work, and it felt like an anchor. "That's exactly what we need around here," Reba said. As the sun set, painting the Vesper Avenue sky in that familiar, fiery gold, Reba looked around her table. Van was arguing with Kira about the physics of a diaper-launching drone. Sarah was drawing on her napkin. Elias was smiling. The hurricane was still raging outside. The world was still loud, demanding, and unpredictable. But inside this house, right in the center of the noise, Reba Hart had found her peace. She didn't need smooth sailing. She had a crew that wouldn't quit, a boat that could take a hit, and a heart that finally knew how to weather any storm. "Hey, idiots!" she laughed, standing up to clear the plates. "Who's ready for dessert? And if anyone says tactical cake, they're doing the dishes." The chorus of laughter that followed was the only music she ever needed to hear.